What if I told you you can buy a long-range FPV drone that can fly for over 35 kilometers, has a total flight time of around 40 minutes, and it's cheaper than most 7-inches? This here is the Speedybee Mario 8. This right here is the Mario 8 from Speedybee, designed for long-range flying with large 8-inch propellers. So if you know anything about Speedybee, you've probably seen before their Master 5 series of 5-inch quads, the brand new Mario 5. This here is their first long-range drone, and it's interesting to see that they went for 8-inch over 7-inch. You may be wondering why this is and what are the advantages of an 8-inch drone. Well, to put it simply, an 8-inch drone is bigger than a 7-inch, and as such is able to carry larger payloads much easier and fly further distances. So you may be wondering, why should you go for a Speedybee Mario 8 over a typical 7-inch FPV drone? As you know, 7 inches have been the most common long-range FPV drone size for a number of years now. And so you may be wondering, what are the actual advantages of an 8-inch over a typical 7-inch? But in the case of the Mario 8, there are a number of advantages of this quad over a typical 7-inch. And in my opinion, if you're looking to get into long range in 2024, I actually recommend skipping 7 inches and going straight to an 8-inch with the Mario 8. The biggest one, of course, being power and efficiency. With its larger motors and ability to carry the larger 8-inch prop, is of course much more powerful and more efficient than a typical 7-inch. Contrary to what you might think, when you go up in drone size, they not only get more powerful, but they also get much more efficient. For example, these two builds are fairly similar in terms of their motor setups. They're both running a fairly low KV of 1300 on the 7-inch and 1180 on the 8-inch. However, with the Mario 8's larger prop, it's able to generate much more thrust whilst maintaining efficiency over the 7-inch, meaning that even though it's bigger and heavier, it's able to fly for longer than the 7-inch, even with identical battery setups. A second advantage of the Mario 8 is again its size, but this time in terms of how much payload you're able to carry in terms of your battery setups. With the Mario 8, you're easily able to carry a 5000 or even a 6000 milliamp LiPo or a 6S2P Lion setup on the top plate with no need to bottom mount the battery. On the vast majority of 7-inch frames out there, you'll struggle to mount anything larger than a 4500 milliamp LiPo on them, and the majority of frames cannot hold a 6S2P 21700 Lion setup on their top plate. However, the Mario 8 has been specifically designed to be able to carry 6S2P 21700 Lion packs on its top plate with no need to bottom mount the battery. And if you want to take it a step further, I've had this guy rigged up with even a 6S3P Lion setup, which is an absolutely massive battery capacity and a fair weight. But again, with the larger motors and the larger props, the Mario 8 is able to carry this with ease. And I'm typically cruising around 35 to 40% throttle with a 1.2 kilo battery setup, which is pretty impressive. And so far that has got me a total range distance of 17 kilometers from home with this drone, with a total flight distance of 35 kilometers, which is unbelievably impressive for an 8-inch FPV drone. A further advantage of the Mario 8's bigger size is of course its ability to handle stronger winds much easier than a 7-inch. The drone again is of course much more powerful and has no trouble fighting stronger winds. You can see this in action here when I was flying up to the top of the Matterhorn in Switzerland. For the very first flight we put up the iOS Falcon 7, and as you can see it was really struggling with these high winds. Now bear in mind these were particularly high winds, but as you can see here when we put up the Mario 8 for literally the next flight, it was able to handle the winds much better than the 7-inch. It still got blown around a little bit as we were dealing with winds upwards of 30 knots. However, the Mario 8 had absolutely no issues in being able to tackle that wind. Okay, so let's now take a look at how the Mario 8 performs for cinematic FPV. This is FPV flying where you're flying primarily for cinematic shots, not going too far from home, and mostly focusing on getting some nice lines and cinematic shots. I have here the Mario 8 and I'm actually running the LiPo for this setup. I'm running the GMB 2800. That's just because I'm going for a bit of a shorter range flight. As you can see here, the distance I'm flying is only really a kilometer out, so don't really need to run a Lion for this flight. And I'm rocking DJI goggles 2, Radiomaster TX16S with an Express RS module. And we're gonna go and send it now to the top of the mountain. Let's go. Fly over the little house. This is quite a well-known sort of landmark of this area. It's just here flying along the cliff line. As you can see here, it looks pretty amazing. Now I know just from a line of sight point of view I can't see down here, so I'm just going to have to be a bit more careful with this one. I'm going to come in and start diving this now. Okay, so we just arrived at another long range spot. We're going to be flying up to this mountain here in the distance. This mountain is called Ben Wiskin. It's not that far away actually, it's only about 2 kilometers from here. But at this time of the day with the lighting, it's going to look absolutely unreal. I'm going to use a 6S2P Lion setup purely just to drain the batteries because charge that many of them today, and we're going to send it the whole way to the top. Let's go. And off we go. I haven't actually measured this route yet on Google Earth. Normally before I do any long range flight, first thing I'm doing is measuring the distance I'm going to be flying. Of course, to actually see whether it's possible is not looking too far. Like you can see, we're already at the foot of the mountain basically. Coming up with these trees. As you can see, the light here is just absolutely unreal. It's literally perfection. I kind of cruise up through the trees here. As you can see, look at this mountain. This is just perfection for FPV. Perfect little ridge. So obviously this part of the mountain is going to be in the sun. Oh my god, look at that mountain. Incredible, incredible scenery. Right, here we go. Here's the ridge line coming up. So in about 3 seconds, I'm going to spin the drone around and drop it the whole way to the bottom. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, spin. I'm going to drop the throttle and go through the middle here. Class. Surf along this ridge. I'm going to keep going. I think there's a couple of trees down here. There's indeed. Let's go through this gap in between the two. Boom. Through there. Let's go through these trees. Just kind of as close to them as possible. Always makes for a nice shot. And then we're going to round it off a few seconds here. Just going to go through a couple more trees. Through like this here. And let's start diving down and then turn around and reveal what we just dived. So round past this tree and turn around and reveal again Liskin Mountain. Class. That was a great shot. So as you can see, the Mario 8 performed really well here at these locations. I was able to get a flight time of over 20 minutes on these 2 flights, and that was using 2 of my own 4200 mAh Lion packs in parallel, giving me a total capacity of 8400 milliamps. And I was using that along with the GoPro 12, and the drone was able to carry that with ease. As you can see, I was able to dive the mountain, pull out of dives with absolutely no problem at all. If you were running that setup on a 7-inch, the quad would be really heavy, and you have to be much more careful in terms of going for maneuvers like that. However, the Mario 8 is able to lift this payload with absolute ease, and it's able to do plenty of maneuvers and fly really well. So our next spot is down by the coast, and we're going to take a look at how this guy performs in terms of some coastal cliff diving, some chase footage, and flying nice and low to the water. And this right here is one of my most flown spots. This is a place called Murlock Bay, and I'm always down here with the quads. And today I was running the Mario 8 with a G&B 2200 6S with my GoPro 12 up at the front and the pole cam at the back. So this is basically a custom 3D printed mount I have. A link will be in the description if you want to check it out. It's basically a big 3D printed pole at the back of the quad where I have a naked GoPro 8 sitting there, and it's recording basically what the drone sees as it's flying. The quad is cruising along perfectly here. It's actually really light. It kind of feels like a 5-inch to be honest. As you can see here, it was chasing Paul right up to the cliff edge, and right here you can see we're about to do a couple of dives. We're going to flip the drone and dive it down the side of the cliff. Again, I'm doing this with a pole cam on the back of the quad, and it's performing absolutely no problem at all. Very little wobble and vibration, even with this thing hanging off the back, which is pretty incredible. And as you can see, overall, the Mario 8 has no problem at all doing these kind of typical cinematic lines where you're actually not flying too far away from home. And with this setup, I was able to fly for 11 minutes, which is pretty impressive for such a small LiPo on a quad of this size. So we're now going to take a look at how the Mario 8 performs for what probably most people are going to be interested in, which is mid-range mountain surfing. This is when you're sending quads like this up to mountain peaks, typically around 3 to 5 kilometers from home, flying right up to the top of the peaks and diving down the incredible mountainsides, ridges and peaks. At the start of the year, I took a trip out to Switzerland to dive the incredible Swiss Alps. We of course went up to the Matterhorn and dived down it, which was absolutely amazing. As you can see, I did this with the Mario 8 and it performed perfectly. Right, so we're going for our first flight of the Matterhorn here. We're going to be flying the Speedybee Mario 8. This is an 8-inch quad in terms of specs. It's got the Speedybee Mario 8 frame, Emax Eco 2 2807 1300 kV motors. In terms of recording camera, with the GoPro Hero 12 Black with ND32 filter. And for the batteries, we are running 2 Matterbats, 4200 milliamps in parallel, so 8000 milliamps in total, 6S2P. Just got to send them up here and go for our first flight. Feel the window right up here. I'm 60% throttle. Want to reveal the sun? I'm at the top. Holy shit. I'm at the top of the Matterhorn. I am at the top of the Matterhorn. There we go, and dive. I'm going at nearly 100 kilometers an hour right now. This is absolutely terrifying. We also dived a number of peaks in the surrounding area, where I took the quad up as far as 6 kilometers from home and dived it right down the side of these mountains. And as you're just about to see, the quad performs absolutely brilliant for this type of flying. Let's take a look. We're up doing another long range flight, as you can see here. Heading up to this mountain here in the distance, and we're going to be basically flying up to the top of it and then diving right the way down along the trees and down into the valley. In terms of distance, I'm only really going about 4 kilometers. It's not a particularly tricky run, but in terms of the pack size, I'm running a 8,400 milliamp pack, which is 2 4,200s in parallel. Let's go. There we go. We're currently at about 1 kilometer. Already past the village, and we're on our way to the first point of the hill. And last but not least, here is a 6 kilometer from home mountain surfing flight I did with the Marriott, flying literally from the balcony on our Airbnb right up to the top of the mountain named the Plattorn. This sat at around 6 kilometers from our Airbnb, and I had clear line of sight the whole way to the top of the mountain, right along the ridge and back down again. So it was the absolute perfect spot for mountain surfing. So let's take a look at the footage. What I'm going to do first, fly out a couple hundred meters, and just test our GPS return to home. What we're trying to find out is how quick can I go. Let's keep my amp draw as low as possible. Coming up to around 1.6 kilometers away. You can see here we're about 3.3 kilometers out, just under 3.6 volts per cell. Use about 1300 milliamps. So we're out about 4.1 kilometers now. Oh yes, I've just realized actually, this drone I have not set up. Oh yes, I haven't told Betaflight that 3.5 volts per cell isn't actually low. So it's probably going to start beeping rather loudly, and it's going to say on my OSD low battery, but it actually isn't. But again, I'm just making sure I'm staying within line of sight in terms of my video signal. If I dip down too low there, whilst I am pretty much clear up to there, I wouldn't be sure. As you can see, what I was talking about earlier, you can see the skiers skiing down there. There is contours in the side of the mountain, so whilst I can see to the tops of these peaks no problem from where we're staying, I can't see those skiers, and as such I can't see those slopes. So if I was to dip down there, whilst it looks like I would maybe have line of sight, the reality is I wouldn't, and so I'd most likely lose my video signal. We're approaching 5.5 kilometers out, 5.4 sorry kilometers out. We're approaching the top Plattorn. Here we are, just under 6 kilometers out. You can definitely feel the wind up here, and yeah, that looks amazing. There we go, top of the mountain. The video dropping down a bit there. Now we start our dive. As you can see, straight away speed picks up as we are now coming with a bit of wind. We can now start surfing this mountain. See, temporary video drop there as I went through behind the rock. Again, I want to stay on the left hand side of this rock here, as you can see, because anywhere on that right hand side is outside of line of sight. I do not want to go there, as I will lose it. And I'm always ready here to bump my throttle in case something does go wrong. But you see, as you can see here, I'm going twice the speed. Keep my head up.
Over the top of the peak again. There's another little ridge for us to dive. Looking nice. Keep the head up. To the left side, yep, more to the left now. I've moved over a bit. Link quality still at 100, looking well. Let's get ourselves lined up here. Start diving, and let's come down the mountain. Here we go. So you can see what I mean here. My point is being illustrated about how, even though you're coming down the mountain, so we're coming down the mountain at a fair speed here, about 108 kilometers an hour. But you can see my amp draw is still quite high, or about 20 amps. So you can see what I mean here about it's deceiving in that on the way down the mountain, yes, you are going quicker, but you are still pulling the same amount of amps. So if your battery was really low and you thought that just the wind would bring you home, the answer to that is no, it wouldn't, because you would still be high on your battery in terms of your amp draw. So you would need to still be very careful. But yeah, again, this is the beauty of where we're flying. I have clear line of sight this entire way down the side of this slope. So I'm basically able to cruise down here with literally no worries in terms of video signal. So there you have it, full flight to the platform and back again. Total distance of around 16.8 kilometers with a flight time of around 18 minutes. So the final flying category we're going to take a look at for the Mario 8 is long range FPV. And I'm talking proper long range FPV. We're not talking about 5 kilometers from home here. We're talking about 10, 15, 20 kilometers from home. And you're probably wondering, how the hell is the Mario 8 going to fly that far? But wait till you see. As you can see in this flight, we had the Mario 8 16 kilometers from home. Now, when you're doing this kind of long range FPV, which is pure distance runs, you're obviously not going for footage. So you're not going to want to run a GoPro here because it's just taking up unnecessary weight. And you're arguably not really going to be getting a shot if you're just going for a pure distance run. However, if you are flying up to a mountain, you might want to think about getting a shot. And if you do want to get a shot here, you can potentially run a naked GoPro or the likes of the DJI O4 air unit, which records footage out of camera. Now, if you want to push this sort of range, you are going to need to use Lion packs, but I'm not talking about any Lion packs you can buy off the shelf. If you want to maximize the range you can get out of a quad, you want to be using high quality custom cells, the likes of the Samsung 50S cell, which is rated for 5,000 milliamps, or even newer cells, the likes of the BAC 45D, which are only rated for 4,500 milliamps, but have an amp draw rating of 60 amps, meaning that they're able to output a lot more current, and as such you're able to gain more capacity out of the battery. Now, for the several 15 kilometer plus flights we did with the Mario 8, I was actually using a mix of 10,000 milliamp Lions and 15,000 milliamp. When we pushed it to nearly 20k, we were using this 15,000 milliamp, which was actually 3 5,000 milliamps in parallel. I had 2 on the top plate and 1 on the bottom plate. It was a bit of a mess, as you can see, a bit of a janky setup, but the quad was able to make it the whole way out. And another flight we did a 3 quad chase right out to 15 kilometers. We had all 3 quads flying right behind each other right out to the distance of 15 kilometers from home, and each quad was actually running between a 9,000 to 10,000 milliamp Lion here. And on top of this, I had a GoPro mounted at the top of the quad, so the quad was fairly well loaded. So as you can see, the Mario 8 was able to cover a total distance of just under 32 kilometers here. Pretty flippin' impressive for an 8-inch drone. So if you're buying your Mario 8 and you just want to do pure long range, or you want to fly to mountain peaks that are really far away, you can absolutely do that, no problem at all with the Mario 8. Just bear in mind, if you are trying to fly out to peaks upwards of 10 kilometers from home, bear in mind that you do need to factor in the altitude you're going to be climbing when you're doing that kind of long distance, because you're going to be pulling a lot more amps on the battery on your way out than you are on the way back. So if you're flying out 10 kilometers but you also have a 4,000 meter elevation to climb, you then need to add that elevation distance into your total distance, because during that climb you're going to be pulling a lot more battery on the way out compared to if you were just flying out 10 kilometers from home. You're going to pull a lot less amps doing that. So that's just something to bear in mind with the Mario 8 if you're wanting to fly 10 kilometers plus but you're also going to be climbing up large mountains. Just remember to factor in that altitude and that climb into your total distance, and then work out in terms of your setup whether you're going to be able to cover that distance or not. So another incredibly cool feature of the Mario 8 frame is actually the frame's ability to be folded up. As you can see, all 4 arms can fold down, making the frame much more portable, and this is an absolute game changer if you're going traveling. As you can see here, the Mario 8 frame fits in a suitcase way better than a typical FPV frame. And if you're not a fan of having the folding mechanism, you can screw in the arms as normal if you want to keep them a bit more secure, but I have used this mechanism myself and I can confirm it is great. This is an extremely unique feature of this frame, and something you definitely do not see very often in the FPV world, especially on a long range quad. It's typically quite big.
Okay, so if you're convinced and you want to build your own Mario 8, you're probably going to be wondering, well, what parts do I pick? If I'm building my own, what parts do I need to build this drone up? And you've come to the right place, because I've actually built 5 of these drones, would you believe it? I have 2 of my own, but I've also built a couple of them for some mates. So I've actually experimented with a number of motor sizes and different KV options to kind of work out what's the best for the Mario 8 overall. So if you're wanting my recommendations to the ultimate Mario 8 build, I personally would recommend going for 2809 or 2810 motor. I have here the Brother Hobby 2810 1180 kV on this Mario 8, and on this build here I have the iFlight Zing 2809 1250 kV, and both of these motor setups work great for 8-inch props. They're able to carry the payloads I've talked about in this video with no problem at all, and they're both really efficient. Both of these quads have been out to 15 kilometers and back, carrying the same payload, and have both landed at pretty much the same voltage. So in terms of motors, 2809 to 2810. You know, you've probably seen that Speedybee have their own motor for this frame, which is the Speedybee 2807 1050 kV. Now, when I built my first Mario 8, I actually built it with a 2807. I used an Emax Ego 2 2807 1300 kV, and I found, to be honest, that this was actually a little underpowered, especially when I was running a 6S2P Lion setup and a GoPro at the front. The quad felt a little sluggish, and I was definitely lacking power. So I went online and I ordered a couple of these Brother Hobbies. Funny enough, I actually thought these Brother Hobby motors were fake, as I found them on AliExpress for £30 for 4, which was obviously really cheap. But a few weeks later they turned up, and it turned out they were actually genuine Brother Hobby motors. Either way, they performed much better for me than the stock 2807s, and these have been much better for being able to carry those heavier payloads. You can buy any 2810 around 1100 kV, could go up to 1350 kV if you're wanting a wee bit more punch, but just be careful because this is quite a high kV for an 8-inch prop on 6S. In terms of flight controller and ESC, you can go with any F405 or F722 stack, but you just want to make sure you have an ESC of around 55 amps or bigger. On this particular quad, I have a GetRC F405 60 amp stack, and on this build here, I have a HodiBro F7 50 amp stack. But again, you can use any F405 or any F722 50 amp plus stack. In terms of video system, the Speedybee Mario 8 is primarily built for the DJI O3 air unit. Now, you may be able to fit the DJI O4 Pro into this guy. This is Ben for the future here. I've actually taken so long to make this review that the Mario 8 is now O4 Pro compatible. So in order to get this working, what you need to buy is a Mario 5 O4 Pro upgrade kit. It's only around $10, dead cheap. And basically all it is a pair of side panels to the front of the drone, as you can see here. And using this, you're then able to mount the DJI O4 Pro camera right at the front of the drone, and the air unit at the back is normal. And as you can see, I'm now able to get native O4 Pro mounting into the Mario 8. So the Mario 8 is now fully O4 Pro compatible. Also, if you're still rocking the Caddx Fister or the OG air unit, you can also run that no problem. As you can see, I have the OG air unit. In this build, there is the OG DJI cam and the big air unit at the back. A cool little feature of the Mario 8 you might have spotted here is actually it comes with these nice side panels. I didn't have that installed on my main build, but I have it on this build, and they look pretty cool as well. They kind of keep the stack protected, which is a nice little feature. In terms of receiver systems, you can run Express ORS or Crossfire. Primary O3 build, as you can see here, I have Express ORS diversity. I have my little T antenna out the front here. I have another little antenna on the side here mounted on a standoff, but you can also run a barred pole out the back of the quad on this little mount. Now, you'll probably notice that I have a different GPS and VTX antenna mount to what you've seen online with the Mario 8, and the Mario 8 comes with a bit of a weird mount for the GPS. I didn't really like it, to be honest. So I designed this custom triple SMA mount at the back. If you want to download the STL, a link is down in the description. And as you can see, I can mount the 2 SMA video antennas on the back here. And as you can see on my second build here, which is running Crossfire and the True RC barred pole, which is kind of what you want for long range. If you're wanting to fly mid or long range, you want to have one antenna mounted horizontally and one mounted vertically. And using the barred pole at the back here is the best way to do that. You might be able to see here I've changed the TPU on my Mario 8 to have different color schemes. Again, all the STL files for this will be down in the description. And so you can go ahead and download these and print them off in any color you want. Final little feature of my custom mount here, as you can see here, is that it actually has GoPro prongs on the back. You probably wonder what these for. So you might have seen in some of my reels I've been getting this cool pole cam shot. Basically all this is a 3D printed pole, which I have a naked GoPro mounted to on the top. I'm just screwing this into the back of the GPS mount, and then that hangs off the back and allows you to get that incredible perspective. Again, link to this will be down in the description if you want to check it out. So there you have it. There is my full in-depth review of the Speedybee Mario 8. We've covered pretty much everything there is to know with this drone. And again, if you're wanting to get into long range in 2025, I would highly recommend checking this guy out over a 7-inch, because I really do think that this is a much better deal in terms of value for money. Definitely the Mario 8 is the top of the list here. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.